everyone, my name is August Beck and this is my oral presentation on T.S. Eliot, the American poet. T.S. Eliot's original name is Thomas Stearns Eliot, but he goes by the abbreviated version of T.S. He was born September 26, 1888 in St. Louis, Missouri, and he later died outside of London in an area known as Kensington because he traveled there to become a British citizen. While he lived in America, he attended the Ivy League University, Harvard, and when he attended that school, he contributed several poems to the Harvard Advocate Literary Magazine. This is a little cute picture of him smoking a cigarette that I found on Google Images. After earning both his master's and his undergraduate degree, T.S. Eliot traveled to Paris, France, where he spent a year. And after this, he moved to Europe and settled in England in 1914. His very first collection of poems is known as Prufrock and Other Observations, which was published in 1917, and people often say that it is the reason why he gained so much popularity as a poet. 10 years after his poetry book was published, Eliot became an official British citizen, and he received the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1948, which is a highly prestigious award to win. Some of his really prominent works include a lot of his poems. However, he did not exclusively write poems. He was also an author of many articles and even plays. Right now we're going to take a look at some of his most prominent poems. The piece Ash Wednesday is a poem about his personal religious struggles after his conversion to Anglicanism. Another important work would be Giratoin, a poem he published in 1920, and it is a personal reflection about his process of aging. Bert Norton was published in 1936, and it's another notable piece that can be found in his collection of works titled Four Quartets. Many of his poems can be found in the Four Quartets. His most famous poem is titled The Wasteland, and many scholars have even argued that this poem is one of the most important of the 20th century. It's rumored to be inspired by his own personal recovery from exhaustion. I will now read an excerpt from the poem The Wasteland. What are the roots that clutch, what branches grow out of this stony rubbish? Son of man, you cannot say or guess, for you know only a heap of broken images where the sun beats, and the dead tree gives no shelter, the cricket no relief, and the dry stone no sound of water. Only there is shadow under this red rock. Come in under the shadow of this red rock, and I will show you something different from either your shadow at morning striding behind you, or your shadow at evening rising to meet you. I will show you fear and a handful of dust. Next to this excerpt, I've provided my own personal analysis, explaining the elements of romanticism and modernism used throughout this poem. The Wasteland is written shortly after World War I, which could explain the themes of death and rebirth found throughout the lines, and those themes could also pertain to his own perspective of being reborn or replenished after his illness. Some contributions to American literature include his experimental tones with the genre ekphrasis, which is when an author uses heavy details or imagery to describe a visual work of art in their literary piece. Frank Capagna writes about this in his article titled Ekphrasis, Cultural Capital and the Cultivation of Detachment in T.S. Eliot's Early Poetry. In this article, he describes T.S. Eliot's tone as disinterested or detached throughout his early works, which was a very unique or rare voice for an author to take on during this period of time. Throughout his career, he pertained many accolades, and as I stated before, he was a man of many talents who just happened to specialize in poetry. He published a play, Sweeney Agnostics, in 1932, and it was performed the very next year. There was also a period of time between 1916 and 1921 where he wrote approximately 100 reviews and critiques of other literature, which was very beneficial to aspiring scholars who looked up to him during this time. Shortly after he won the Medal of Freedom in 1964, he died the year after in Kensington, London. Here's a few cute little pictures that I also found on Google Images. Overall, he was a very prime author of his time, and he is very praised by many academic scholars who study his work. He worked very hard to become one of the most prestigious and well-known poets of American literature. Hope you enjoyed listening. Oh, my works cited page.